This special city council meeting to order. And Teresa, will you please call roll?
Deputy Mayor Bill Pelosa.
Here.
Councilmember Baggett.
Here.
Councilmember Brown.
Here.
Councilmember DeCoursey.
Here.
Councilmember Holman.
Here.
Councilmember Trout Manuel.
Here.
Councilmember Wales.
Here.
Thank you.
All right. We have one item on the agenda this evening, and that is budget options. This is a special council meeting, and Shelley, I believe you have a presentation for us of sorts.
Of sorts. The only thing I have is what was put in the packet, and for discussion purposes, I did put it up here on the screen. What we have done is reached out to Burke and Associates to ask for a request for proposal to do a fiscal sustainability study for the city of Auburn. And in the proposal, they have broken it down into 6 tasks. And I don't know if you went through these or not, but I will briefly go through the tasks. And one thing that I was surprised to learn when I read their lead-in, that Auburn has tied with the city of Redmond with a growth rate of 3.1% for 2017. That's in the state, so we are growing very quickly. And with that, the demand for services are increasing. Businesses want services and citizens want services. We are up against a revenue situation in regards to maintaining and sustaining those services. So what they would do is they would come out and do a kickoff, and they would like to find out, they will meet with, probably to begin with, the directors and the mayor to find out what type of forecast and should they use their modeling, and just to lay out the groundwork of what this sustainability study will entail. And the detail for the budget scenarios, which they're offering to provide 3, and the benchmarking, and they would recommend 10 cities to benchmark against, and what kind of criteria, do we want to do certain revenues per capita or level of service, like police officers per capita, things like that, and maybe park space and park rec. We need to define what we'd like them to benchmark against. And any other options that the city would want to focus on. And that would be all determined in that first task meeting. The second task would be developing a fiscal model. Now, the city does have a fiscal model. I would like Burke to look at the existing fiscal model, look at the assumptions in that model, and maybe prepare their own model. And maybe if we have something wrong that they don't agree with in our model, to share that with us. Maybe we aren't conservative enough, or maybe we're too aggressive. Maybe we're not looking at growth rates correctly, and I'd like their feedback on that. And we also, part of this, they're going to look at a 10-year time frame. So they're going to look at the growth of the city, the services that will probably be expected, and look at how those would be funded. The third task, this is where some of the benchmarking would be also revenues. This is pretty straightforward. How much property tax per capita, how much sales tax per capita or Reliance, compare it against other cities. The magnitude and timing and success levels of voted measures. So I thought that maybe we could spend some time on that, because I know there's been some talk here about putting things out to the voters, and it'd be nice to have some feedback about other jurisdictions or agencies' experiences with going out to the voters and the success or lack thereof. I think that would be a good thing for us all to hear. They're going to evaluate strategies for revenue enhancement and cost containment. So this would be where they do look at level of service as well as new revenue sources that are available to the city, voted and non-voted. They will conduct interviews with staff and speak with departmental staff, council members, and any stakeholders that we have identified by the project team under task 1, and get everyone's perspective and ideas and options before they come back. So, and also to make sure everyone has a common understanding, that we're all on the same page going through. Task 5 is to provide some budget scenarios in addressing the fiscal gap that the city is experiencing. And one of the things that Finance has asked them to do was to put in a recession sometime in this time frame. You know, I know that these are the good days and things are going well, but it depends on which economist you talk to, and you'll get a different story. But most of them are thinking there will be some, in fact, I listened to King County chief economist last week, and he's saying possibly next summer, which then, but next year's an election year, so that doesn't really pencil out, because generally we don't have a recession in an election year. And some are saying after the election. Interest rates are probably going to be cut again before the end of the year. 80% of the economists are now predicting maybe even as soon as July next month that the Federal Reserve will cut those rates. So that's one of the scenarios that we have asked them to do. We need, you know, we haven't looked at a recession in any of the scenarios. We looked as those things are just rolling along under our existing level of service that we have and what that cost is. So if there's an increased level of service that's going to be required or requested from the citizens or businesses, and there's possibly a recession in there, we need to look at all that and see how it impacts the city. And then they will do a council presentation on task 6, the final one. They'll come back with a presentation to council with their recommendations and findings and such. The cost for this work is standing about $67,000. And I know that they did work for, in this neighborhood, maybe even a little bit less for a Score jail, and they did a phenomenal job with bringing forward and just getting down into the data and combing it and looking at it from every different way, and came back to the board with recommendations on what to do moving forward. They didn't come forward with this with the panacea that was going to make everything very nice at Score, but they pointed out some hard facts and some facts that weren't so hard, that were easier to digest. So I'm here to hear your comments of what you think about this proposal.
Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, Shelley, I noticed several of the deliverables included slide decks, and then there's going to be a PowerPoint presentation of the council. Do you anticipate the use of this information in the community, in the greater community? And if so, what would that look like?
Well, I do anticipate this to be used in the greater community. Reading their bios in the back and the work that they've done they will be able to provide, and they have provided for other cities, recommendations and how they've gone out to the community. One of the things is even where they polled the community to see what the citizens and the businesses thought, about different measures. So I would think that this would be very relevant and should be readily available. And
Thank you. I'm very supportive of the idea of using this information because this, we want to make sure that the citizens of our city understand what the options are. I mean, all too often people say, well, you should either cut spending or increase taxes, but you should have I think a complete understanding as we have to make these decisions. So this will help inform us all, including the citizens.
right.
Thank you.
Other questions? Councilmember DeCoursey?
So Shelley, what's their time frame for producing these deliverables and giving us a wrap-up of the analysis?
Well, we haven't gotten down to a timeline, but I think this would be done by the end of the year. The work that they did for SCORE was pretty extensive, and it was done over 4 or 5 months. It's pretty, depending on the interviews and how long it takes them to comb through the data, assemble the data, but I would anticipate this to be done well before the end of the year.
Other questions from council? Thoughts on moving this forward? Councilmember Holman?
I'm familiar with their work from SCORE, my position as an alternate on the SCORE board, and with the city of Federal Way leaving SCORE, it completely changed the financial picture, and they came in, and rather than being pessimistic, I became fairly optimistic based on their data. And I see that they've also done a report for the city of Shoreline, the business owner outreach for potential B&O tax. So they certainly have the background for what we need here in the city of Auburn. I'm not totally convinced we need a B&O tax, but I certainly need the data to help make up my mind. And if the data indicates that, I'll follow the data every time.
This would be an outside look into our finances. And they should be able to answer any questions and help give us tools to move forward.
Other comments? Councilmember DeCoursey?
I think it's very important to get an outside look. Shelley, you've done yeoman's work on this thing. You've given us tons of information, tons of options. You've sat with us individually and reviewed everything. We've had some good news, not so good news coming in from the state, but we still have this whole type of a fluid situation that's going to be with us for a fairly long period of time, and what's going to happen over the next 10 years and beyond that. So I think it's a great idea to be able to bring somebody in to give us the outside look, to give us an analysis, and to provide this council, and as we get into next year, other council members the opportunity for some decision-making, because we'll be at it next year for budgets again, and we really need to know where we're at. I'm most curious on their comment about the FTEs and how that may look as they go through that process and what that means for maybe rebalancing how the city does business. So I'm going to be really interested in looking at how the data comes forward and what it means.
All right.
Councilmember Baggett?
Thank you, Your Honor. Basically, I think most of the questions are going to come up when we see the report. But I am generally in favor of this. I think it's going to be money well spent, and it would give us a yardstick to measure things by, and I think it'd be a good process. Thank you.
Other comments, questions?
Okay.
Councilmember Trout Manuel?
I have to agree as well. It's nice to hear from another perspective, because as Claude did say, you have done your job really well, you know, keeping us informed and everything. So it would be really nice to hear from someone else to see where we're at and where to move and where to go.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think you'll probably find that there aren't going to be a lot of surprises. Shelley has been incredibly thorough and detailed in all of her findings, but sometimes you need that
Yep.
third-party look at it just to ensure that there is nothing that has been overlooked, although, like I say, with Shelley's experience and expertise, I doubt that there is, but we will find out.
Yeah, I think that it's a wise decision by the council, and it's, you know, this is a big decision and a lot of information that has been provided, and it's a hard decision for some of these things, and I think that it's prudent to have another look at it, and I don't know if they're going to solve everything, but they will give us a pathway.
Deputy Mayor Palooza.
Looking at the funding for this, I think it's very reasonable, $67,000. I mean, we have seen reports come through this dais, a lot more with a lot less deliverables, so I think it's well worth funding.
I will work then with Burke, Emily, and company at Burke and see if we can get a contract put together, and it should be coming forward then to council under resolution for approval.
Great.
Okay?
Thank you, Shelley.
You're welcome.
And since this is a special meeting, unless there is something else on the budget options that council would like to add, we cannot take any other types of discussion during a special meeting. Are there any other budget comments? Hearing none, we are adjourned.